Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are live here in Mission Control Houston at the International Space Station's Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Texas. This view, coming to you live from the International Space Station, is of the interior of Dragon Endeavour. Endeavour will be carrying home the Crew-8 astronauts and cosmonaut today with an undocking that's scheduled at approximately 4:05 p.m. Central, 5:05 p.m. Eastern. Dragon Endeavour arrived at the International Space Station 232 days ago.
Endeavour Houston, com check on the RF big loop. We've completed the configuration. No, it looks like you were trying to...
Dragon on the big loop, how's your loud and clear?
Yeah, roger that. I couldn't tell if you were trying to hear me or not. Go ahead and initiate a com check with MCCX.
And you just heard some of the procedures taking place to get ready for that undock. Dragon...
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, com check.
Dragon, we've got you on the big loop loud and clear. And syncing back on LIO, your go for LIO cartridge 2 install and IMV duct teardown. 2.103, 3.1, how copy?
Copy, LIO cartridge 2, IMV duct teardown, we'll go.
Those you just heard are voices of our flight director on console today, Paul Kanya, alongside NASA astronaut Matt Dominick. Dragon Endeavour arrived at the International Space Station 232 days ago. In total, the spacecraft has spent 236 days in space by the time it splashes down off the coast of Florida. Splashdown is scheduled for Friday, October 25th at approximately 2:29 a.m. Central Time, 3:29 a.m. Eastern, and again, that is off the coast of Florida.
SpaceX copied.
And coming to you live are views of Dragon Endeavour's exterior as it's docked to the International Space Station. The space station is currently above the east coast or east side of Asia. We have 4 crew members returning to Earth that include NASA astronaut and Commander Matt Dominick, pilot Michael Barratt, mission specialist Jeanette Epps, alongside Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Grebenkin. You're now getting another look inside with the crew there on your screen. You can see Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Grebenkin as he gets secure in his seat, ready to get home. NASA astronaut Michael Barratt assisting him in the process. And to the far right of your screen, you'll also see NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps working with her colleague and NASA astronaut Commander Matt Dominick as she gets suited up in her seat, ready for undock.
Dragon on the big loop, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule, just standing by your go for hatch closure, Dragon hatch closure.
Standby 1.
We'll go.
As you heard, we're gearing up for hatch closure.
Dragon SpaceX, your go for hatch closure. 2.103, 3.8.
2.103, 3.8, go for hatch closure.
And with that communication we just heard, we are go for hatch closure.
On the big loop, hatch closed for event details.
Copy, hatch closed, and we're going to sequence the state machine to reflect that.
Copy. We see the CPRV open.
And with that, we heard that the hatch has closed, with all four crew members inside Dragon.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, city contract.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. That was a good suited comm check. Had you loud and clear. How me?
Loud and clear.
And with that, Matt, I've got a few updates for you. First, on the thermal control system, we commanded the hex bypass to allow crew control. It's on the max cooling setting right now. Quick reminder that cabin temp control is through procedure 4.080 until pre-chill prior to deorbit. How copy?
Dragon.
Okay, and with that, the next event I'm tracking is suit leak checks. When you're ready, you're go for 4.011.
Hey, we are go for 4.011. Stand by. Six Dragon on the big loop. We have 5.2. We've got good icon check amongst the crew.
And Dragon, I missed your last. Say again.
Just reporting in 5.2. We got good icon check for all the crew, and we are procedure complete with suit donning. Moving on to suit leak checks.
SpaceX copies.
It is October 23rd, and we're joining you today from SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. And you are looking at a live view of Mission Control Hawthorne. And we are awaiting Crew-8 to begin their journey back home at 2:05 p.m. Pacific Time or 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Departure from the International Space Station with NASA astronauts Matt Dominick, Michael Barratt, Jeanette Epps, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Grebenkin. I'm Jessie Anderson, the Senior Engineering Manager for Falcon Structures Manufacturing at SpaceX, and we are joined by a familiar face from NASA Communications, Sandra Jones.
Thanks so much for having me, Jessie. It's great to be back here.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for tuning in to watch live coverage of Dragon completing its 8th crew rotation mission to the space station through NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Crew-9 just arrived on station a few weeks ago on September 29th and will be taking over for Crew-8, who's now headed home. Crew-8's Dragon has become the longest dock to the station for a single mission, spending 232 days docked. Crew-2, which also flew on the same Dragon, held the previous record at 197 days and 20 hours, and Crew-7 was right up there at 197 days.
That's right, Jessie. Crew-8 launched earlier this year on March 3rd and has now spent 234 days in space, with almost 232 days docked to the International Space Station. During this time, they completed 3,760 orbits of the Earth, traveling more than 99 million statute miles. Endeavour continues to hold the record for the most time in orbit by a crewed spacecraft. Let's go over to Nilofer Ramji at the Johnson Space Center to talk a little bit about how the station crew have been preparing to send the crew home and what we can expect from here until Dragon departs the space station. Nilofer?
Thanks so much, Sandra, and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. The flight control team is primed and ready for this afternoon's undocking operations. Today's team is being led by NASA Flight Director Paul Kanya. Since Crew-9's arrival on September 29th, it's been a busy time during our direct handover period. Over the last few days, the astronauts worked to pack Dragon full of cargo and return for the return journey home. And earlier today, Mike Barratt and Jeanette Epps, both NASA astronauts, worked to remove cold bags in polar freezers, which store cold research samples and scientific experiments into Dragon Endeavour. All of this critical science and cargo is offloaded after we get the crew out following splashdown, and then the scientific samples will be sent to researchers for final analysis in just a few hours. The crew also took their SpaceX suits and got them ready for the journey home. Since getting the hatches closed, all 4 crew members are now suited up in their seats and standing by for undocking. Additionally, teams at NASA and SpaceX have been preparing for undocking by conducting a series of checkouts of the Dragon spacecraft and space station systems. This is just one of the items teams watch as they prepare for these operations and splashdown opportunities. We want to make sure that crew aboard Dragon and the teams who cover them have the best conditions for a safe and speedy pickup. We've got the final go, no-go poll coming up in just a few minutes, where the joint SpaceX and NASA teams will make their final call for Dragon Endeavour to depart station.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop. Final reconfigurations for undock are complete and nominal. Houston and Hawthorne teams have pulled go for undock at 2100 and separation at 2105. At this time, can you confirm crew readiness for undock?
SpaceX Dragon, we are go for undock, advisory closed.
Okay, copy all.
Perfect, and that go, no-go poll that we've been looking for has been completed. So we'll continue to be in joint operations until the spacecraft has entered the approach ellipsoid. That's the 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere around the International Space Station that teams use to monitor arriving and departing spacecraft. So over the last 8 months, Crew-8 has had what I like to call a astronaut's eye view from the space station. They've had an opportunity to capture some pretty amazing views from low Earth orbit. One of the photos that we got was with the space station being about 250 miles above Earth. They're too far away to make things out like cars, people, or buildings, but what they can see are other landmarks around the world. And the long camera lenses they use help zoom in on familiar sights from our home planet. On September 19th, the crew captured a celestial sight with comet C 2023A3 rising through the atmospheric edge towards the sun. The crew had been watching the tail structure evolve over the last little while. And here's another long exposure shot. This was taken on August 11th above the Indian Oceans as star glitter from above. Such a beautiful aurora. And now finally, another iconic shot of the Italian peninsula, or what many of us know as the Boot of Italy, taken on August 1st. Of course, we get satellites collect imagery of Earth too, but the International Space Station is unique in viewing these opportunities because astronauts and cosmonauts can tell scientists on the ground what they are observing and what stands out in real time. So they'll have a few more opportunities to take in those views during their flight home as we prepare for undocking coming up here at about 4:05 p.m. Central, 2:05 p.m. Pacific. But in the meantime, I'm going to toss it back over to you, Jesse, and Sandra, and Hawthorne.
Awesome. Thanks, Nilüfer. Separation is set for approximately 2:05 p.m. Pacific time or 5:05 p.m. Eastern time, which is just under 8 minutes from now. At the moment, Dragon is in its final configuration before undocking, and we are waiting for mission operators. They've already completed their go, no-go poll, but they will call out if we will be moving forward with the undocking procedure shortly.
And as we mentioned earlier, just like during its approach to the space station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, which requires no action from the crew on board. Departure is typically a little bit faster and sometimes easier since the crew doesn't have to stop at any waypoints like we see when a spacecraft arrives.
Once the undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of 4 departure burns, which are carefully choreographed maneuvers that will increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. And then from there, a phasing burn will place Dragon on a trajectory to align it with the splashdown site.
And so we did hear that go, no go poll earlier. Everyone polled go. That is just a time for everyone on the ground as well as the crew on board Dragon to ensure things are in place. All systems are go, as the name suggests, for the undocking, which again we are targeting just about 7 minutes from now. Now, at the moment, the crew is suited up as they are during a dynamic phase of the flight. We might hear a call out for the crew to also put their visors down ahead of the actual undocking itself. Teams work together to ensure everyone is ready to support undocking. And so again, that poll was one final check-in, and we did get the go for undocking today.
Telemetry.
Undock sequence commanded.
Some good news there. We got that call out that the undock sequence has been commanded. So again, the beginning of the sequence is the umbilicals retracting. These umbilicals connect Dragon systems to the space station, transferring power, telemetry, and commands between the two vehicles throughout Dragon's stay. So now once that's complete, Dragon will unlatch itself from the space station by releasing the 12 hard capture hooks in 2 separate phases. All that combined will take about 4.5 minutes, and then Dragon will be ready to depart the space station and begin.
Umbilical demate complete and nominal.
Again, another good call out there that the umbilicals have been demated. And then Dragon will be ready to depart from the space station once those hooks have been unlatched and begin to move itself further and further away using its thrusters.
That's right. And while we sometimes do have views of the undocking as it takes place, we aren't expecting those today just due to handover between our satellites. That happens from time to time, but we might get some views throughout the broadcast towards the end once we get past that time period. So Dragon's initial departure from the International Space Station is a little different from other docked spacecraft like the Soyuz, which rely on springs to push them away from the docking port. Dragon will execute 2 short thruster firings to undock using a combination of the 12 Draco thrusters around the base of the spacecraft, with the first 2 breaking any stiction between Dragon and the docking port, and the second slowly backing the spacecraft away.
We are going through the undocking commands, and they have been sent up. So we'll take a look at the umbilical retraction as that is ready. That should probably take just about a few minutes. Once the umbilical hook is disconnected, Dragon will be relying entirely on its own power sources from batteries generated through solar cells instead of taking power and telemetry from the space station. On console today, we have Flight Director Paul Kanya that is managing the room here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Perfect, and we just heard the call out of the first set of hooks being opened. We'll now look for the umbilical retraction and look for 2 sets of 6 hooks. So this is going to be the second set of 6 hooks that will open, and that will take just a few minutes.
All hooks open.
Perfect. That was the call we were waiting for, with all 12 hooks now open. Next up, Dragon will execute a short burn just before separation. And there was the call we were waiting for. This is a combination of
Endeavour departing. Fair winds and falling seas, and Miyaki Pisaki, my friends.
Come on, Dragon. The circle will never be the same without you.
good words from our crew members departing space station right now.
Dragon, it's been an absolute pleasure to serve aboard the space station and stay on the watch. It's in great hands. Godspeed.
Kojo, you'll never guess what I found.
We have a fantastic view of a Dragon coming in.
Dragon SpaceX late call depart burn 0 was nominal.
Good.
Perfect, and we've just received confirmation of the nominal burn that just took place. It's a very short burn using the service section of the Draco thrusters to break some stiction from Dragon and the International Space Station. All right, we have confirmed separation here at 4:05 p.m. Central, 2:05 p.m. Pacific, as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying approximately 260 statute miles over the Pacific. That means that Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander had completed their journey aboard the International Space Station, wrapping up over 230 days on the orbital outpost as they splashed down off the coast of Florida early Friday morning. Here in Mission Control Houston, the team will continue to monitor the departure of Dragon as it exits the approach ellipsoid. Again, that approach ellipsoid is a 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere that monitors arriving and departing spacecraft. As we continue to monitor here jointly, on the right side of your screen,
nominal,
you will see...
And Dragon, at this time, your go to DOF suits in 4.012. And I've got another reminder here that the big loop will be deactivated following Dragon's exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Copies go for 4.01.
So we have a nominal depart burn lasting approximately 16 seconds. And the team continues to monitor the departure of Dragon as it exits the approach ellipsoid, the 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer sphere. And with that, we're just minutes away from the next burn, but we are going to pass it over as we stand by in mission control to our teams in Hawthorne. Jesse and Sandra, back over to you as we continue to walk you through this process.
And we've got a lot of action going on, and we've got some really cool views from the International Space Station looking at Dragon Endeavour as it's moving further and further away from the International Space Station. We had burn 0 and departure burn 1 already completed. That departure burn 1 is creating more and more distance between the International Space Station and Dragon, and allowing Dragon to exit that keep-out sphere, as Nilofer mentioned. And again, some really cool views there.
Station Houston on the big loop. Endeavour's exited the keep-out sphere. Break for Endeavour. Godspeed. We'll see you all in just a little bit.
Neil.
And on your screen, you're continuing to see a view of Dragon following its undocking from the International Space Station at 2:05 p.m. while flying over the Pacific Ocean, approaching the western tip of South America. And you did hear some communications about a mic check between the ground and Dragon Endeavour. This is taking place because once Dragon exits the approach ellipsoid, the big loop will be deconfigured. The big loop is that integrated loop between Mission Control Houston, Mission Control Hawthorne, the International Space Station, and Crew Dragon Endeavour. But now that Dragon has departed the International Space Station, all those folks don't need to be in the same comms loop anymore, so they're working to deconfigure that as soon as we get out of the approach ellipsoid. So just working through some of those steps a little bit, as you heard.
We see Dragon here getting further and further from the space station and getting closer and closer to Earth. And with that, we've received confirmation that we've just exited the approach ellipsoid. Crew-8, Dragon are on their way home.
And with that, Crew-8 has officially departed the International Space Station. It will take them about 34 hours until they make their way back down home to Earth. The crew is currently doffing or removing their spacesuits to settle in for the ride home, and Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Time or 12:29 a.m. Pacific Time on Friday, October 25th, followed by the crew getting picked up at sea by a SpaceX recovery vessel. As they rest up, our teams here will continue to keep an eye on the weather to ensure a safe return for Dragon and our Crew-8 astronauts.
And though our coverage here in Hawthorne is wrapping up for today, we will turn it over to the NASA team in Houston to take us through the next phases of the Crew-8 mission. Our friends at the Johnson Space Center will provide continuous live audio-only coverage along Crew-8's journey home until we rejoin. You can find the audio-only link by visiting nasa.gov/live and clicking the mission audio link, or by searching for NASA Mission Audio Live feed on YouTube at go.nasa.gov/liveiss.
Meanwhile, we will rejoin for live visual coverage starting roughly 1 hour prior to splashdown. And as always, you can find mission updates on X at NASA, at SpaceX, and on the web at nasa.gov. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you and our Crew-8 astronauts very soon.